Hello, my name is Meagan McNamara, and today I'm going to be talking about the experience of being a mandated mental health nurse and that completely life-changing and devastating experience, which is something that I am still getting psychological support for now. So I got a job at the Canterbury District Health Board at the Child and Adolescent Emergency Mental Health Team. My team leader and my manager both knew my significant health history and that I had a written medical exemption to not require the vaccine. They completely agreed with me, having heard my medical history. And as the time went on, I was only working with them for 5 weeks. 3 weeks in, the mandates were announced, and I knew that I was about to be mandated out of work. And so I was quite vocal about some of the experiences I'd had with my health, so that when I was just gone, a couple of weeks later, they wouldn't turn around, hopefully, and say, "Oh, where'd that nurse go? Oh, she was just an anti-vaxxer." When the government did release its sort of official exemption requirements, I didn't actually even qualify to apply, despite having a life-threatening allergy to PEG, which is an ingredient in the Pfizer vaccine, and the clotting, the 3 clotting disorders, the brain aneurysm, as I've mentioned. Anyway, I went in to see a GP at the local clinic near my house. He'd earlier promised me a written exemption, but had said, there's no need to give me one now. The government's not going to mandate. When I went back and saw him in October 21, he popped open his health direct database that he is guided by. It just stated, at the moment, no exemptions are allowed while the government decided what to do. Okay, so you've asked about what happened in my workplace. I mostly had people who had heard my medical history and felt, as medical staff, they felt that I had every reason to be given a medical exemption. But then I also had some people who were hostile towards me. So people in my workplace were dismissive or hostile towards me, and when speaking about some of the clients that would be treating who were choosing not to be vaccinated. I guess what I wanted to add in terms of the reasons I chose not to be vaccinated was, I've been vaccinated with all the other vaccines before it came to COVID. This vaccine was approved only under emergency use authorization. Frankly, I want to highlight that why on earth should I ever have to ask for an exemption to say no to a medical treatment? I'm a human being. I have the right to make informed decisions about my body. And actually, I have the right to make decisions that are uninformed. It's my body. Why is it not my choice? Especially as a child, as a survivor of childhood sexual assault, why don't I have the right to choose what happens to my body? As I'd just been working for the last 5 weeks and trained up in the child and adolescent emergency team, I had a very supportive team above me who had suggested that, seeing I was not able to keep my job and work in the clinic, maybe I could take triage calls from home, and would that be something I'd be willing to do? And I absolutely said yes. I'd never not worked. I was very concerned about how I was going to cope without a job. She went off and spoke to the people above her and was advised that no, every single person working for the Canterbury District Health Board must be vaccinated, whether you're working from home or not. Yes, I was not allowed to work at home on Zoom. The impact on my life was that I feel like I lost everything: my marriage, my job, my home, my community. I consider my world now to be the events that happened before COVID and the no jab, no job day, and the events from that day. I went from helping suicidal teens and loving my job to being so depressed I could barely get out of bed. Luckily, my mother and my best friend were also going through this, and so I had some support during that time. After I was removed from my career, I had nothing to do, nowhere to go except the protests. I really spent a lot of time laying in bed, very depressed. I joined the Wellington convoy and ended up camping at Parliament for 3 weeks in protest against the mandates. I ended up live streaming every day with my new friend Chantel Baker. Since the protest, I met Gayleen Barnes. She is the director of a film, River of Freedom, which I helped make. The protest ended. I was really, really struggling. I sort of ended up couch surfing, staying at people's houses, couldn't afford rent and petrol and food on the benefit. And so I would do, little bits of work, cash jobs for painting inside houses, gardening, cleaning. Eventually, I ended up working as a dancer in a club because I didn't need a vaccine passport to do that. I sat outside the club one night before one of the very few shifts that I did, and I thought about how my life had changed. I'd gone from being a well-respected health professional, training student nurses, working at a top mental health facility in Melbourne, collaborating with the Melbourne University, earning a six-figure salary, traveling around the world, and here I was now dancing in my lingerie to cover my rent and my petrol. The anger that I felt was palpable. At the very start of the mandates and the segregation, all I had was questions about the vaccine. I certainly didn't think it was good or not good. I just had questions. What about the data? Because I spoke out, I went to protests and held signs up. I had a lot of abuse from people, verbal abuse, online abuse, huge amounts of it, whether it come from family, from people who had been my close friends. But I also had objects thrown at me by people who didn't want me to stand and talk to them. I was told that I should, basically as a nurse, I must be crazy to not get a vaccine. Vaccines are safe and effective, and I hope that you die alone of COVID. I stood with a friend outside the hospital holding up a sign saying "End the mandates," and a person in their car tried to run us over. I couldn't believe that people would be so awful to other human beings. We need to, moving forward, look at what is ethical medicine. We need to stop using fear to silence people. We need to be able to allow people to have different opinions, allow debate. So yes, aside from ensuring we have ethical medical services and differences of opinion being allowed, the mandates removed informed consent. What should we learn? Gosh, I know so many people that are waiting for acknowledgement. We stood on the lawns of Parliament and asked our government to acknowledge us and recognise that we had some concerns. They didn't acknowledge us. We'd like to be acknowledged. And dare I say it, I'd like an apology. I'm sorry that we destroyed your entire career, locked your husband out of the country to the point where, 9 months apart was just too long for us to be able to rebuild our marriage. Section 11 of the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act 1990 guarantees everyone the right to refuse medical treatment. This means that, I'm supposed to be allowed the autonomy to decline medical intervention, even when it is recommended by health professionals. That was not upheld. So if there was ever a pandemic again, anything which, sure, you're telling us they're going to be coming faster waves, we should never be mandating anything. If there is risk, there should always be choice. No government official should ever have the power to make someone lose their job because they won't take a medical treatment.